I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo,
and you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He was a swing in the 2016 Broadway revival of Cats, covering Potato McCavity, Carbuckety, Pounceville, and a couple more. So welcome, Joshua Burrage, and thank you for joining me.
Hello, happy to be here.
Very excited to have you on. I always love talking to swings because you have to kind of understand so many different characters, which is the big thing that I, have really broken down. But before we get into this, the 2016 Cats, I always love hearing from you about your history of Cats before you ended up in the show. Because it's like, was it the 1998 movie? Was it a regional production? Like, what was your first introduction to the musical?
Yeah, my introduction into Cats started pretty young. My parents had bought that 1998 film, and me and my older brother, who also is a performer at the time, were both, I think I was 5 and he was maybe like 7, and we just kind of watched that film on repeat for months and months and months, and would kind of just copy them and imitate them and pretend we were cats. And at that point, we weren't dancing or performing at all. So that was kind of our introduction into theater, really, as well. And my parents have, all these videos of us just, going for it, doing the Jellicle Ball, kind of just imitating these creatures. And I think it was kind of a cool introduction into theater and Cats as well, because, the plot is so, not many people understand it, or just from the first time watching. So it was easy for us as kids to kind of understand. And we just kind of became obsessed with it so much that we broke the VHS from watching it so many times. And so that was always a big part of our lives. And I hadn't seen a live production of it until this 2016 revival. We both were so excited when we heard it was coming to Broadway. So we bought tickets to one of the first few months of the production, and we went and were obsessed with it and we're freaking out just because we loved it so much. And I, just through seeing friends in the show, I think I saw it probably 7 times before I even joined the cast. So you could say I'm definitely a Cats fan. So then it was just, kind of full circle seeing that, or being a part of the production finally, because it felt like, that was my introduction into musical theater and anything Broadway and dance. So to do it was so cool.
That's awesome here. So have you ever posted, has your family dug up those old videos? Is that?
Yeah. If you check out my Instagram, I think I've posted it 3 times just because it's one of my favorite videos.
I love it. We'll point to it to make sure that there's young you going through the Jellicle Ball, which we'll get to. But I guess let's get into it now. As a 5 and 7-year-old, did you and your brother, did you recognize what the ball actually is? That's a big thing I've talked a lot about is that I don't think it's a very kid-friendly show when you really think about it. And there are so many examples and stories. And even when I saw it the first time, there were a bunch of kids in the audience of, just enjoy it. But then it's the ball's an orgy. And so it's kind of a weird thing to be so polarizing. So such a big part of kids' lives and, a bunch of kids who've burned through VHSs. But did that, was there an aha moment for you when you started kind of learning the show as an adult that was I can't believe we have home videos of us doing this?
Definitely. I think, of course, that we weren't processing that at the time, but through time, even before I joined the show, I rewatched clips of the show and was like, oh, this is what that is. And then, of course, learning the show was just, kind of a yes, yeah, you're right. This is exactly what that is. So
amazing. So you get cast. What was the conversation like with your brother?
About
being in, it's like you're both your dual dream, and then you get cast in the show.
Yeah. Well, funny thing is, he actually became the dance captain and swing of the national tour that had gone out of the same production. We covered the same exact tracks, did pretty much the same exact role. Besides, he was also dance captain. So that was probably one of the most exciting parts of it all.
That sounds like we've got another episode to record here soon. That is amazing. So the two of you basically burn through as 5 and 7-year-olds a VHS tape, and then both end up being able to do the show as adults. I mean, that's probably, that's got to be very rare, because there's not that many people that, it's the peak of your field is being able to do this on Broadway and on tour. And it's a lot of people's dreams to do that. And I think of all the the kids who shoot. I'm much more into sports, and so the kids who shoot a basket at the end of their driveway think they're going to win the NBA championship, but most people don't. And here you two got to do that. That's really cool.
Oh, thank you. It was so cool, and we definitely still kind of just like freak out that happened.
Yeah. So let's go into how did you said you had friends in the show. How did the joining as a swing, how did that all come to life? And then I've got some questions about being a swing, because that whole concept is fascinating to me.
Yeah. I had not gone in for the production at all, because at that point I'd still been on tour with another show when the whole auditions happened for the first round of everything. And then I came into the city, and I weirdly was always missing whenever the auditions were happening. I was always out of the city or unavailable. And they had announced the closing date for the show. And this was probably like early summer 2017. And I just went to the ECC because I had an ECC one day, and I didn't know if they were looking for anybody because it was kind of just a required call. But I was like, I need to just go in because, this is something that means so much to me, and I'll beat myself up if I don't even just go in and at least do the audition and feel proud of that. So I went in. It was just a day of dancing and singing. Didn't hear anything for probably almost a month. And then I had been on vacation at the end of the month, and I get a email from my agent asking my availability for a swing position. And the audition was in a few days. It was taking place at the Neil Simon on the stage. And I was like, oh my God, I got to go in for this. First of all, terrified, about the prospect of being a swing, because I'd never done that before, but also I had to do it. So I took a bus to New York from vacation. Thankfully, I was in Maine, so I was still on the East Coast. Went in, had a day of that, left, went back to Maine to finish out, vacation with my family. And then I was called in the following week. It was kind of like a 3-day marathon of learning all the dances, because being a swing, you need to be able to, cover a bunch of different tracks. So I was learning different routines in about 3 days. And then the final day happened. And then I was supposed to be teaching in Santa Cruz that next week. And my agents had called me that night and were like, can you start tomorrow? So I was like, yes, first off, let me call my boyfriends in Santa Cruz and let them know I can't come and teach. But also, yes, absolutely. This is a dream. So it was kind of fast and furious. It was definitely one of those auditions that you didn't see coming, and it just happened. And it was just so cool.
Yeah, and it's childhood dream, so it's got to be drop what you're doing to do it. Yeah. Who was the very first time you went on? Who did you go on as?
Coricopat.
Okay. So I want to ask a little bit about being a swing, because you said you hadn't done it before, and I, as someone who can't sing, can't dance, I'm not doing TikTok routines in my basement, but I can't get over the fact of learning the show 5 different ways, 5 different times, 5 different songs, like the way what parts you're singing and the dance numbers and everything. What is that like? You didn't have a lot of time. You said 3 days, basically. How do you go into learning all of that and being able to do that night in, night out, where you're basically switching around who you are?
Yeah, so thankfully, so it was 3 days of learning like just little dance sections. So that wasn't as difficult, but I was thankfully able to learn the show. I had 2 months they gave me
Okay.
to learn all my tracks. So I was taking over for Corey Snide, who was a swing. So he was there basically teaching me, and he was a dance captain, so he was teaching me basically his tracks in those 2 months. And we had a lot of new people coming in at that point too. So as those new people would be learning their tracks, I would learn it along with them. So that was difficult in its own way because I wasn't able to do the tracks yet. I was kind of just learning them and then learning 6 different tracks in a matter of 2 months, but not actually kind of performing them and, figuring that out. So I learned McCavity first it was like 2 weeks because they had to put 2 people in. So I learned that with them. And then from there, it was kind of just like Corcopat, Alonzo, Carbuckety, Pounceville, and then Tumble Brutus after that in the next like month and a half.
So when you're going between, and I want to get to the character kind of analysis of this here soon, but when you're going in between and you're going one day as one person, one day as another, or one cat to the next cat, what is that like? How much thought do you put into the character when you're on stage versus just, I got to make sure I hit the right track. Like I got to make sure I got the right dance numbers and everything. Like, is there that level of thought versus, when you hear and you talk to someone who's doing the same track 8 times a week or, about 8 times a week, they're really toying and digging into like, this is what this cat would do.
Yeah. I honestly felt very protected by the choreography because I think how it's set up and how it's choreographed is the movement very much feels like the character that you're playing. So, although you don't really get to like dive into maybe this character as much as you would if you were doing it every night, the movement itself that you're doing, feels like this character. And, Alonzo's very like pretentious and pulled up, and the movement's very, very strict and precise versus like Carbuckety, who's more of a young cat, and his movement's very playful. And same with kind of Pounceville. Like there's a lot of floor work and stuff, kind of as a kitten would move. So that definitely made me feel safe in kind of switching back and forth. I felt like that made it easier to change from cat to cat and kind of move with the personality. But it's definitely kind of a mind trick, going from one person to another.
Yeah, and you have a wide range. I mean, we think about McCavity on one end to Alonzo to Carbuckety, like those are 3 very different personalities. How much from the 1998 movie did you kind of bring into, your interpretation of the show?
Yeah, probably a good amount. I feel like I was so young when I first saw that I wasn't really able to kind of process who each character was. So that was really cool about doing this production was I was able to really understand who each cat was. I feel like I definitely knew who Mistopheles was, who I didn't end up covering. But besides that, I didn't really know much about each cat. So I feel like I kind of was able to make my own of each character versus kind of like drawing in. But, a lot of the movement, it was a fusion of Gillian Lynn and Andy Blankenbuehler. So that was kind of cool because I felt very inspired by that choreography going in. And I felt like I kind of could pull from that. But as far as characters goes, I feel like I was just so young. I was just seeing like cats.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of cats.
I mean, it's an interesting piece because I've only seen the show twice and have like watched YouTube clips. And I think I know more about the backstories and like the character analysis of the cats, but I'm still pretty confident if you had me tried to pick between Pounceville, Carbuckety, and Tumble Brutus, I'm not sure I'd be able to point them out in a lineup for you.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think like as a 5 and 7-year-old, like you and your brother, it's probably just like, there's just a lot of cats. And if it's not the Mistopheles and Old Deuteronomy, like the ones that are very, very different and noticeably different, it's probably just like, they're just cats dancing.
Yeah, I remember like the twin cats very specifically, Mistopheles, of course, Old Deuteronomy, Tugger, Victoria the white cat.
Yeah.
But like that, everything else is just like cats.
It's just a blur.
Just a
So
blur.
let's get into, I mean, since you came in part of the way through, were you given the 3 words for all of your cats?
Yes, that was really nice because that was a nice way to introduce ourselves into these characters and how they should how their movement should be influenced and who they are.
So what were McCavity's 3 words?
You know what? I wish
Don't remember?
I remembered that. I feel like I got more of Plato's, and you know what? I'm not even sure. They were definitely something like ferocious,
McCavity's one I've yet to talk to like a deep dive into McCavity. And so that's the one I'm kind of curious about because it's it's the character that if I was writing the show, I've had a lot of thought about how I'd rewrite the show. Not the dance numbers or anything else, just like the plot, like how I would try to change the plot. And McCavity is the antagonist that I like. McCavity would be the bad guy where we could have an actual arc of the story. And I don't think it's utilized that way. And so it's like, it's a character that I just don't know what to do with besides I love the song.
Yeah. That was my favorite character to go on for sure.
So tell me a little bit about like, what is McCavity's backstory in your eyes?
Yeah. I kind of saw him as just this kind of like rebel, evil cat that has hypnotized these poor, female cats and other cats to join his kind of gang. And he's done some horrible stuff to these cats, aka why Grisabella is so damaged and hurt. People kind of fall into his trap. And same with, like Bomb and Demeter have kind of escaped his hypnotized, world that he's captured them in. And I think he just kind of shows up and maybe he's just a troubled cat that doesn't know how to connect with people. So he has to aggressively come for the cats.
Yeah. It seems like the Demeter being sexually abused by McCavity is like one of the truths of the show. Like it's one of the things, there's a lot of rumors to the show of like, because of how vague a lot of stuff is. And that seems to be one that's like a documented truth of the show. I am curious about Grisabella because that seems to be less documented of like, depending on who played it and how they played it was he the reason that she left? Is he like essentially her pimp? Like, was he like part of like, what is that relationship? Because it doesn't seem like that's consistent production to production.
Yeah, that's what I took from that she had gone with him and people kind of viewed her as a traitor. And she hadn't like escaped from there, but was kind of thrown to the curb. And now, she's an older cat, so everyone kind of doesn't really know her and just sees this poor, sad, abused cat, and is judging her for that. I feel like in the cat's world, it's kind of just like all the cats like heard rumors about her, but no one really knows who she is.
Yeah, except for some of the older ones that probably had relationships with her before.
Right.
What so do you view McCavity as part of the Jellicle tribe, or is he kind of the outsider just trying to cause chaos?
I would say he's a part of the Jellicle tribe, but in like removed, a part of it, but removed. I think he doesn't know how to re-enter back into maybe the Jellicle tribe, and is acting out because of that. But I like to think of him at one point, being a part of everyone.
Mm-hmm. And he's supposed to be brothers with, I think, Tugger and Monkish Trap, as like potentially Old Deuteronomy's kids or in some variation of that. And it's like, so I think he's part of the tribe, but has kind of went down this negative path and is like the bad boy. And then, he essentially kidnaps his dad or brother, depending on how, the ages of everyone, how they play it.
Yeah.
And so it's a weird one because when you looked at I don't know if you saw the new movie, the new movie really positioned him as like, I'm the choice for not Grisabella. Like I'm like, the whole thing is about how he was going to be kidnapping everyone so he could be the joker choice.
Right.
And I think that that's such an interesting piece because I didn't get that in the stage production of like, that he's all about making sure he's the choice. But as someone who tried to make an argument for him, I do think it's an interesting one of like, what is his argument of why he should be picked besides that he's old, he's on the older side of cats.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do like how they kind of incorporated him more into, kind of just fighting his way into getting picked versus, because why else would he be chosen?
Completely.
There really is it feels like there's no redeeming qualities to him, or a reason for him to be chosen. So it is an interesting take to see them kind of just make him like, he kind of has to get rid of everyone in order for him to be the only one to be chosen.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, because I think being able to go on for a lot, especially the kittens, but also a McCavity and Alonzo, a little bit more mature. My interpretation of the show, not my humorous interpretation, but my actual like, hey, this is kind of the root of the through line for the show is that for the most part, everyone's trying to give the reason why they should be chosen, but not everyone really thinks they should be. So some are just there to entertain and it's part of the party and that's it. You, by playing, as a swing, so many different characters, you played a few that really have zero chance of being picked. They're young. They're not like they probably don't want to be picked. And then you have some like McCavity that probably wants to be picked, but is not going to be. How do you think about that in your performance, knowing like that's kind of the crux of this show of going in of like, I'm trying to give my worth to Old Deuteronomy as McCavity, but I'm also just like kind of trying to be a little bit of a nuisance as Carbuckety, knowing I'm not going to be picked and I'm just this young kind of like happy to be there kitten.
Yeah. Honestly, again, with like the choreography, I feel like it lends itself so well to helping you out with that. And I think just knowing in general, going on for McCavity or Plato and going on for Alonzo, these people that are more mature cats and even like the twin cats as well. It feels like there is so much more weight to them. And even just like mentally going into those tracks, I felt already like not stressed, but you really have to be like in the zone, and it lends itself to kind of feeling that way. Like I have something to prove. I have something to, I felt like I already was like trying to prove myself that I'm worthy of going into the heavy side layer versus the kittens. You like playing Pounceful, playing Carbuckety, Tumble Brutus, the people that are kind of more of a nuisance. The choreography itself kind of just feels more playful, and it doesn't feel like there is this like huge weight to everything. It does feel just more playful and joyful. So I felt like that already put me in the mental state of not feeling like desperate to get chosen or be in the spotlight or getting in front of Old Deuteronomy. I feel like the choreography was so brilliantly done that you feel that already, like going into it.
Yeah, that is, I think, the genius of the show is what Jillian and then what Andy did, which is where they placed people and who was standing next to each other and who was interacting with each other is what is almost telling the story that the lyrics aren't.
Yeah.
Which my gripe of that is that, again, knowing the names of all these cats and everything, is like, I don't know half the time who I'm looking at. It's like, all right, which one is this guy again? Who's she? What was the relationship? So I want to hear a little bit about a couple of the other ones. I want to hear a little bit about more Alonzo, because I'm not sure, like, I know he's part of the coming of age dance with Victoria usually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of it. He's just a little bit more mature, but he's not a kitten. But like, what is his backstory?
Yeah. With him, I saw him more as kind of like the sidekick to Monkistrap. Like he's always kind of following around him. Maybe he's a little bit younger than Monkeystrap. Maybe he wasn't given the opportunity to kind of be a leader like Monkeystrap. But I think he kind of I think he grew up as an educated cat that thinks he's above a lot of other people, and has kind of always been like that, and feels like he has a responsibility to protect a lot of people, especially like you'll see that in Rum Tum Tugger. He's totally turned off by anything that Tugger does or anything that's not proper or pulled up. And he kind of rejects all of that. So I see him as somebody that grew up kind of feeling like he was the most important, and then maybe didn't end up being that important leader that he thought he was going to be. So is kind of, jaded and bitter in that way. But definitely very much looks up to Monkeystrap, and feels like he should have that power as well.
You basically just described like Rob Kardashian.
Yeah. He's a Rob Kardashian cat.
He's the Rob Kardashian of cats. I love it. Okay, I want to hear a little bit about, and you can tell me a little bit more about how this all came to life, but in your cat's Wikipedia page, which there's a fan Wikipedia page, it has you as an emergency cover on the tour.
Yes.
So what is that? What does emergency cover really mean? Is it just like you're on call wherever they are in the country and have to fly out there and go, and just because you already know the tracks?
Yeah. So what happened there, that happened actually with a few people from the revival company that were asked to go out. There were, the show is so dance heavy, and injuries, I feel like, are inevitable with this production.
Completely.
And there was a few times where they would be down coverage out on the tour. And because, there's so many people that know the show, they kind of just called people whenever they needed somebody. So for me, there was, I think the Monkeystrap was out for maybe a little bit. And their Play-Doh McCavity had been on for Monkeystrap. And in that case, there was only, I think someone else was out. So there was only, I think my brother was the only Play-Doh McCavity cover, which is scary, in case anyone else gets injured, they're already kind of cutting cats. So they had flown me out there for 3 weeks to be just on standby in case they needed me for Play-Doh McCavity. And I didn't actually even go on. It was kind of just there as a safety net. So that was also pretty wild being there, because I hadn't done the show in 2 years at that point. I think about 2 years. So I kind of had to, thankfully my brother was there to help me out, like relearn the show. But I just watched the show every night and was there for extra coverage. Francesca Grinnell, who was a swing in the revival company with me, was out there at the time for Rumple Teaser. I think Sarah Jenkins had just been out there for Jenny Anydots. So basically, yeah, we were just out there. Thankfully, they kept us out there, so it's not like we had to go back and forth, but just there, just in case, we were needed to go on.
Which city were you in the whole time?
I went to Detroit for 2 weeks and then DC for a week.
Okay, so that's not like, you weren't like one of the 2 days and then just like all over.
No, yeah, thankfully it was like, sitting down somewhere, and my brother was out there, so I lived with him for the 2 weeks in Detroit, and then got my own housing that other week. But
that's so fun.
That was cool in itself to say that we were together for a moment.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd probably be tough, but like your family tried to go out if you both went on the same day, but you probably learned about an hour before, or like not too long before.
They were willing to do it. I remember my mom saying, she's like, if it happens, I'll try to get there.
Yeah. I think that's just a cool piece. So it was like you're, from 5 to 7 to adults being able to do this kind of dream thing together, which is unique. Again, like there's not that many people that have that dream that as a young age, and then be able to fulfill it and live it as adults.
It was so cool. Yeah. Especially with that show. It's not even just like theater in general. It was, that exact show. Full circle. Yeah.
Were you in one of those stops that did the inflatable sets?
Yeah. I think that was, maybe we had that all the stops.
It's every single one?
It was like half inflatable, half like hard whatever the rest of the set's made out of.
Okay. I did talk with Sarah Jenkins, and we called it the bounce castle set because it felt like it just like has a long, like a loud thing in the background, like continuously blowing air in there.
Back.
Yeah.
Kind of like when you have a bounce house on.
Yeah. And so is that different to perform on versus like, were they also raked? I didn't know what a raked stage was until I started doing this. And
so they weren't raked, which was nice because that was definitely a challenge about doing it in New York. But the inflatable part, most of it was not where we would usually dance on. And if you would have danced on there, they had adjusted the show to not be up there. Like, I think Grizz at one point in our production she's like all the way, the furthest back on the set, sitting up top, which wouldn't have been able to happen there because it's like mainly like the back surrounding part is the blow up part. But I will say it does it's deceiving. Unless you know it, that it's blown up, you would not be able to tell.
I just love the idea. I kept thinking when I heard about it the first time that like there's all the tumbling. I'm like, all right, it's like jumping on a trampoline, like at a bounce castle. Like you can do 2 flips instead of 1. Like you're getting a little extra lift.
They should have used that a little more. I don't know if they needed to be sturdier, but they could have done some cool acrobatic moments on there.
Yeah, I'm happy to tell the writing of the story. I'm happy to give like my take on that. But me giving dance choreography advice to an Andy Blankenmeter is probably not the right area of expertise. But let's talk a little bit. You said you saw the new movie. What was your take? Like, did you go? I think a lot of people you were on tour. You might have been in that time frame where it was coming out around when you were on tour.
I had just gotten off a tour, so I was back in the city at that point.
Okay.
And I was so excited to see it. Me and my friends were honestly, like all my friends too, kind of have similar stories of watching the movie growing up and just being obsessed with it in some capacity. So we all, we bought tickets like 2 months in advance. And we went, and honestly, we had a great time together. It's different.
Yeah.
One of a kind, I will say. But I think just, there was something about being in that theater. Everybody, especially being in New York, I think, because we were surrounded by a lot of other theater people or theater lovers. There was something about being in the city and seeing that movie that made it epic. People were singing, people were dancing, clapping. It just felt like a celebration. And I think that made the whole experience 10 times better.
Yeah, I saw it in a press viewing.
Okay.
Which was mostly people, I think, either related to the show or media or something like that. And it was full, and it was a lot of people laughing at parts that probably aren't funny. And that was where I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting thing. Like if this group is struggling to keep it together, where there's probably a little bit of level of professionalism going into that type of viewing.
Right.
Then I was like, I can't even imagine I'm from Indiana, like going in a theater in the middle of Indianapolis or even further out into like the rural areas of like seeing this kind of movie where there's not as much theater, there's not as much kind of like knowledge of that. And so I've only seen it once since, but I did find that whole thing fascinating. I'm sure it was way more fun seeing it with a bunch of people that also are fans of the show and like can appreciate, whether you loved it or hated it, at least appreciate kind of like what was made of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we felt going in. And I know it's already a show that's so strange to make into a movie and try to have more meaning and, in the movie sense, but we were just such fans. So to go in and see it in a neat capacity was exciting and cool. And we had a good time no matter what.
That's awesome.
It was a fun time. Yeah. We look back at it and we're like, that was an epic night.
Yeah. Well, let's get into a couple rapid fire, and then we're going to go into the $1 million question. So my first thing is you played a lot of the Cats, but is there somebody that you didn't play that you like? If you could just play anybody, and I'll even say like suspend if you have the vocal range for it, or if it's like a female or male. Is there like who would you want to play? Just if you had the ability to play any cat.
I really love Mungo Jerry.
Mungo Jerry.
Yeah, he's a fun cat because you you have that moment, that number that I also just love that number in general. And I love being able to partner and be with somebody on stage. So I think he has a fun track in that sense where he's always with Rumpelteazer. And I always love that number. And yeah, just kind of like that, like mischievous, fun energy throughout the show. I was always kind of like jealous. I was like, that'd be a fun one to do.
Yeah. The Klepto cats.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite and least favorite cat?
That I covered?
Nope. Just character wise, generally. I always try to say I also take the people out of it. Just like personality wise, which one do you really like and which one do you really hate?
I always just have a soft spot for Plato McCavity, I'll have to say.
Like that's the villain. Okay.
Definitely my favorite. My least favorite. This is hard because I feel like there's so many redeeming qualities to a lot of the cats. I would have to say maybe Alonzo.
A little too pretentious for you.
A little too pretentious, yeah. There's less room in that role for anything fun or just, in McCavity's sense, you get to kind of just go crazy. And I feel like you don't really get to do. It's a very pulled up and pretentious role that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you don't want to be Rob Kardashian. Like
exactly.
What is your favorite song in the show?
Skimble Shanks.
Skimble Shanks. Okay. And do you get to do probably a good portion of that with some of the other, the characters you get to go, right? You get to help build the train and everything. Cause I don't think McCavity's in it, but.
Yeah. That was what was fun about being a kitten. They're kind of active throughout that whole thing. Like Alonzo and Corcopat are kind of just on the sides doing like little moves. And they do get to build the train too, but being on for the kittens, you get to really be very involved with that number.
That's awesome. This is, I think, one of my favorite questions now. Which cat do you think, personality-wise, is thriving in 2021?
Oh, gosh. I think probably Carbuckety. I could see Carbuckety thriving. I feel like he's, that I could see him as a TikToker. I could see him, he has that energy. I could see him maybe being a little bit reckless even throughout the pandemic. So maybe thriving, maybe he's not thriving, maybe he's being, unsafe, but I feel like he's kind of just going off. He has that young energy, and I could see him, this is his time.
Yeah, he's okay. So he's probably a little too reckless.
A little too reckless for a pandemic, but
he's young and he's making the most of what he can in the time he's got.
Exactly. Right. Definitely has a rock account.
Yeah, I love it. And he's got his own dance moves. He's okay. My $1 million question, which is what I've asked everybody, it's the basis of the show, is I don't think Grisabella is the right Jellicle choice. So I'd love to hear from you. Do you agree with me? And if so, I'd love to hear who you would pick. And if not, I would love to hear your defense of Grisabella, and I'm going to try to change your mind.
Yeah. I would say if we got to know her a little bit more, I would say choose her. But I'm thinking, about Gus and what's happening to him.
Team Gus. Okay, let me ask you. I love asking this. I've been thinking a lot about this more because everyone who has, there's a lot of people go for Gus, but I'm going to reframe my question to you. If you're old Deuteronomy,
yeah,
what is your criteria every year to choose who's going to the Heaviside Lair?
My criteria would be I would want to choose a cat that has lived somewhat of a full life already. Somebody who has been a big part of the tribe, has not just kind of existed in it, but has, helped out and has felt like a real member of the tribe. And somebody who's been loyal as well to their, the people of the tribe.
Okay. So if that's your criteria now, you've basically just eliminated Grisabella.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'm kind of thinking I have another person in mind. I kind of want to see Jelly Lorem, get chosen. Like he kind of fills, after saying that, I'm thinking she's checking all those boxes.
Yeah, so she does fit. I think Gus also fits your criteria.
Yeah.
I think Jenny probably fits your criteria.
Yep.
And that's why I find this, again, I just find this so fascinating because everyone just assumes it should be Grizz because of the redemption story and like that she's needed it. But the more I start asking people about how does old Deuteronomy choose, it kind of makes you think.
And maybe if we knew more about her, maybe she has done those things and it was a more recent turn, or like, maybe she used to be like that and then something happened to her and we can recall the times when she used to be, like that, but we don't really get that.
No. And, it hit me. I did a live reunion and kind of like celebration and I had 3 past Grisabellas on.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, yeah, we have 15 minutes on stage each night. And that was like, when they said that, I was like, oh, wow, like you don't get a lot of time. And, 15 minutes, 4 or 5 of that is memory. A big chunk of it's little memory. And so you don't have a ton of time to tell that story quickly. And so I think it is like fair if you want to fill in the blanks and we want to assume. And I think that's what the newer movie tried to do. The new movie tried to fill in some of those blanks and give a little bit more story. So that way everyone was, I guess, less confused because everyone's going to confuse no matter what.
Victoria as not a narrator, but, kind of somebody that takes you on that journey. Yeah.
Which I think would be interesting if the stage production did that. But
I would love to see that.
There's no talking in the stage production.
Right.
So your answer now, after going through it that way, your answer is Jelly.
I'm going to say Jelly.
Okay. I love it. She's got the reason.
I feel like she's singing your face off the whole show. She is there she's there for Gus. She's always kind of taking care of people. I see her as very kind, loyal. I feel like she's worthy.
Can I give you a counter argument to Jelly? Because I think it's interesting that because I've thought about her a lot. I've actually not made an argument for her in a sense. But depending on like one way I look at it is people are raising their hand for the song Cats are the ones that are saying like, I want to be chosen. Think of me. And she almost says, I'll give up my opportunity to do this because I want to give you my friend. Like here's my friend Gus.
Yeah.
And so it's like, would she even, I guess maybe you don't get a choice because old Deuteronomy kills you, but like, would she even go?
Yeah. You know what? I feel like I would see her not going. I could see her giving it away because I think she is selfless like that. Which is exactly why she should be chosen. But I don't think she would go. Like now that you mentioned that, I do think she is very like generous of, that.
Yeah. The most common answer is Team Gus.
Yeah.
And then Team Gus fits your criteria.
Yeah. Too. He seems like the right choice, especially age wise. He's seen a lot. It's time.
I just am glad that I am able to change your mind. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you for allowing me to look, deeper into that. And
slowly I'm trying to get everybody who's done the show and potentially doing the show in the future to be like, I don't know, should we really pick her?
Yeah.
And we're going to have a different ending.
And it'll be a different cat.
That's so one thing I would love to do, and I've said this, I think on an episode before, or maybe I've just said it in passing to other people, is I think it'd be really fun to have a different cat each night, especially the tours. So that way when you go, you get a different ending each night and you get a different potential, like who actually deserves it today.
Yeah.
You can still sing Memory and then just add a couple lines of like, here's our choice today.
Yeah. Your last note was not it. You did not get chosen.
Yeah. I mean, you still got to sing Memory. You still have to have that whole thing, but you can bring that whole arc together and her still not get chosen. And then she's just back as part of the tribe.
Absolutely. I think that's almost that'll throw some people off because you expect that after that.
Yeah. And, also 40 plus years of her being the choice is probably most people, or not most people, I would say a lot of people at least have some idea going in of like what they're getting into. Maybe not. I had no idea, but it's not like I think that was on me. Like, I kind of think anybody who goes in and doesn't know at this point, it's like seeing a movie from the 70s. Yeah. Like it's been around long enough that you shouldn't be like a spoiler alert doesn't need to be said.
Yes. Everyone and their mother knows at this point.
Exactly. So what are you working on these days and how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I have been teaching a lot, dance. I was teaching through Zoom during the whole pandemic, and that kind of has transferred into a lot of like in-person teaching, auditioning, hoping to be doing some theater soon. So happy to be seeing it, starting up again. So hopefully doing that eventually soon. But yeah, just, keeping busy dancing in the meantime.
Love it. And how can we stay in touch on social media?
Yeah, my Instagram is Joshua Burrage, and my Twitter is Joshua Burrage 3.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, for telling me way more about Plato McCavity and just the whole swing experience and your experience, and especially cool with the family experience with you and your brother getting to do it to kind of together, but definitely back to back too, which is really cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was so fun.
And thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died. Check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.